The cat's mysterious gaze, it wasn't just a look, it was a summons from the past. Imagine a widow, her hands trembling, staring into eyes that carried not only memory, but a terrible secret hidden for decades. Behind those eyes lay the truth about her husband, about love thought lost, and about letters no one was ever meant to read. And if you stay just one more minute, I'll reveal how a single scarred cat unraveled a mystery that even time tried to bury. But before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you watching from tonight, and what does this story stir in your heart? May your day be gentle, may it carry warmth, and thank you for sharing these moments with us. The afternoon light on Maple Street bent low, spilling across the clapboard houses like honey sliding off a spoon. Shadows stretched long and narrow, painting the cracked sidewalks in uneven stripes. The elm trees shivered, their last yellow leaves trembling in the crisp Vermont air, while a faint smell of wood smoke drifted from chimneys down the block. The street itself seemed alive, breathing, groaning with the weight of time. Cars passed slow, their tires whispering over the asphalt, while beyond them, a church bell tolled the hour with a hollow echo that reached into every corner of town. From the second-floor window of Whitaker House, Helen Whitaker sat watching. Her silhouette was small against the wide pane, the outline of her shoulders stooped yet composed. She was 72, a widow of nearly a decade, and her days had long ago settled into the rhythm of this very chair. Her hair, once auburn and lively, was now silver-white, braided neatly and coiled at the nape of her neck. Thin spectacles perched on her nose, catching the waning light. Her skin carried the soft creases of time, each line carved by grief and endurance. She wore a cardigan of pale blue wool, buttoned high against the draft that leaked through the frame. Helen's eyes, blue, deep as winter lakes, stared not just at the street but through it. To her, Maple Street was a stage where life kept marching forward without her. Children tumbled out of school doors, shrieking with laughter. Men in work boots trudged home, shoulders weary. A mother pushed a stroller, her scarf flapping in the wind. All of it played out as Helen sat still, a quiet witness, unseen and unremembered. And yet, she watched. Every day, every season, as if waiting for something she could not name. This afternoon, the silence broke differently. On the far side of the street, a figure appeared, not a child, not a passerby. It was a cat, a calico, mottled fur of orange, black, and white, carrying the weight of years in its gait. Its eyes, green-kissed with gold, glimmered under the sun. Helen leaned forward, her breath caught. The cat moved with measured steps until it reached the base of her building. Then it lifted its head and stared up, unblinking, directly at her window. Her fingers tightened on the armrest. Something stirred deep inside her chest, sharp and familiar. The cat jumped lightly to the sill, settling outside the glass. It pressed its body low, tail curling around its paws. Its gaze did not falter. Helen rose, her knees stiff, heart pounding. She had seen cats before on the street. Strays roamed the alleys, sleek or ragged. But this one was different. There was something in the angle of its face, the steady stare, the slight tremor in one ear. She stepped closer. Her breath fogged the glass. And then she saw it. A scar. A thin, pale line nicking the edge of its left ear. Her hand flew to her mouth. The sound escaped before she could stop it. A name, trembling, breaking free from a locked chamber of memory. Misty. Her cat. Her companion from years ago, when she had lived in the old Whitaker home before the nursing residence. Misty had been young then, playful, with a habit of curling at Helen's feet by the fire. She had disappeared one winter storm, gone without trace, and Helen had wept until her chest ached. That was decades past. Misty could not possibly still live, and yet this scar, that exact scar. Her legs shook. She reached for the latch, but her hand froze halfway. What if it was only a stray with the same mark? What if she opened the window and frightened it away forever? The cat blinked slowly, then gave a low, raspy meow, hoarse, as if dragged through years of wind and hunger. The sound cut through Helen's heart like a blade of ice and fire. The room swayed with memories. In her mind's eye, she was back in the farmhouse kitchen. Misty weaving around her ankles, the smell of bread rising from the oven, her late husband humming softly as he mended a chair. She saw herself younger, laughing, her hands strong and sure. The walls of the past closed in until she could not tell which room she stood in, the present or the one remembered. She pressed her palms flat against the glass, desperate to feel warmth through the cold pain. Her breath quickened. The cat tilted its head. Its eyes shone like lanterns at dusk. Something was happening, something she could not explain. A thread had been pulled, tying the present to the past. Another memory pierced her. Christmas Eve, many years ago. Her son, barely 10, carrying Misty in his arms, wrapping the cat in a red scarf. Laughter, music, firelight, all of it gone now, swallowed by time. Helen staggered back. Her chest rose and fell in uneven gasps. Tears welled hot in her eyes. The cat meowed again, louder, its voice cracked but urgent. Her lips trembled as she whispered once more, "Misty." And this time, she swore the cat answered. The night passed without rest. Helen lay in her narrow bed, the shadows of branches moving across the wall like slow dancers. Every creak of the old building seemed louder, every sigh of the wind longer, as if the world itself pressed against her chest. When morning came, pale light slanted through the curtains, carrying the faint smell of damp earth from the gardens below. She rose carefully, joints stiff, and moved to her post by the window. The street outside was waking delivery trucks coughing smoke, a boy on a bicycle pedaling past, his scarf streaming behind him. Yet Helen's eyes searched only one place, the sill outside her window. And there it was. The calico sat waiting, paws tucked neatly, tail curled. Its green-gold eyes met hers again, steady as a clock's tick. A sound escaped her throat, half a sigh, half a prayer. She pressed a hand to the window, as though touch alone might cross the divide. Footsteps echoed in the hall. The door creaked and Nurse Clara James entered with the brisk air of a woman who carried order like a shield. She was 40, tall, with auburn hair pulled into a severe knot. Her uniform was always immaculate, the buttons aligned, the collar crisp. Clara's face held kindness, but also impatience, as if time itself was a thing she could not spare. "You're up early, Mrs. Whitaker," she said, setting a tray on the small table. Tea, oatmeal, a folded napkin. Her eyes followed Helen's gaze. "Ah, watching the street again?" Helen shook her head slightly. "Not the street. The cat." Clara moved closer, peered through the glass, then gave a short laugh. "A stray. They come and go. Don't let it trouble you." Helen's hands tightened on the armrest. "No, Clara. It isn't just any cat. Look at the ear, that scar. I know it. I knew this cat long ago. Misty, she's come back." Clara knelt, her eyes level with Helen's, her tone softened, the way one speaks to a child. "Sometimes our minds play tricks as we age. We see what we need to see. It doesn't mean it's real." The words struck deep, though they were spoken gently. Helen felt her throat close, her heart twisting. She wanted to protest, to shout, but the words clung like burrs. Clara touched her hand briefly, then rose. "Eat your breakfast, dear. It will do you more good than staring out the window." The nurse left. The door closed. Silence fell heavy again. Helen turned back to the glass. The cat had not moved. Its gaze was unwavering, as though it had heard every word. Her lips trembled. "I'm not imagining you," she whispered. The calico blinked slowly, then lowered its head, curling tighter against the cold. Time slid forward. Days passed. Each morning the cat appeared. Each morning Helen sat, watching, waiting. It became a ritual more sacred than prayer. One afternoon, as sunlight spilled warm across the sill, Helen leaned closer. That was when she saw it, thin indentations around the cat's neck, half hidden by fur. Not fresh wounds, but faint grooves, like the memory of a collar once worn. Her breath quickened. Misty had worn a red collar, soft leather, with a brass bell that tinkled faintly in the halls of her old home. The bell had gone silent the day the storm swallowed her. And here, on this stranger, or not a stranger, was the mark of that collar. Helen closed her eyes. Tears slid, not of grief but of recognition, of something returning from the dark. "Clara says I'm mad," she murmured to the cat. "But you remember, don't you?" The room answered only with the tick of the wall clock, the hush of the radiator. That evening, as twilight deepened, she found company not from the nurses but from another resident. George Holloway shuffled into the common room, cane tapping on the wooden floor. He was 75, once a carpenter, his shoulders still broad though bent. His eyes were a pale gray, thoughtful, carrying the weight of sawdust and years. He eased into the chair beside Helen. "Evening, Helen." She nodded faintly. Her gaze lingered on the window. "Do you see it, George? The cat?" George leaned forward, squinting, his brow furrowed, then lifted. "Well, I'll be." "I've seen that one before." Helen's pulse jumped. "When?" He tapped the cane, thinking. "Years ago. Might have been when I first came to this place. I'd sit out by the garden. That cat would creep along the fence, same markings, same eyes. Thought it was a ghost back then." He chuckled, low. "Guess it still is." The confirmation struck like a bell in Helen's chest, relief mingled with fear. If George had seen it years ago, then this cat was no ordinary creature. Too old, too constant, too faithful. Her hand trembled on her lap. "So I'm not mad." George glanced at her kindly. "Mad? Number. Blessed, maybe. Some things just stay with us longer than we expect." The words warmed her, though a shiver followed close behind. Morning returned, sharp with frost. Helen stirred at dawn, pulled to the window before her tea arrived. Her breath fogged the glass. The cat was waiting as always. But today, something was different. It rose, stretched, then leapt soft and sudden onto the open sill. Helen's heart slammed against her ribs. She gasped, half in fear, half in joy, as the calico slipped through the cracked window with the ease of water. It landed silent on the carpet, tail high, eyes blazing gold in the thin light. For a moment, time stopped. Helen's knees quivered. She sank slowly into her chair as the cat padded forward, unhurried, sure. Its paws made no sound on the floor. It climbed lightly onto the small shelf by the bed, and there it lay down, curling into a circle. Beneath its weight rested a book. The old Bible Helen kept from her parents' home, its leather cover cracked, its pages worn thin from decades of touch. The cat's body rose and fell on the sacred book, as if it had chosen this place, this memory, this anchor of faith. Helen covered her mouth. Tears blurred her vision. The calico opened its eyes, met hers, and gave a hoarse, broken meow. The morning sunlight spilled across the room in long golden bars, painting the walls with warmth that felt almost foreign. Helen sat rigid in her chair, her eyes fixed on the calico cat that lay curled on her Bible. The book's cracked leather cover barely peeked out from beneath the creature's body, as though hidden on purpose. The cat's chest rose and fell in steady rhythm, its rough breaths audible in the silence. Helen's hand hovered in the air. She wanted to touch the animal, to stroke the familiar mottled fur, but her fingers shook. Instead, she reached for the Bible. The cat stirred, gave a guttural meow, and shifted just enough for her to slide the book out from beneath it. The Bible was heavier than she remembered, the weight not only of scripture but of decades. As she set it on her lap, something inside shifted, a faint whisper of paper against paper. Her brow furrowed. Slowly she opened the cover. A cascade of folded sheets slipped free, tumbling into her lap like autumn leaves. Her breath caught. They were old, yellowed with age, edges frayed, but the handwriting was unmistakable. She traced the ink with trembling fingers. "William," her late husband's hand. Tears blurred her vision as she unfolded the first letter. The ink had faded, but still carried his distinct script curve, deliberate, tender. "My dearest Helen, the days are long but eased by the thought of you. Misty watches me as I mend the fence. She follows me like a small guardian, her eyes never leaving our home. I think she knows more than we do. She keeps watch, and I feel safe." Helen pressed the letter to her chest. William's voice echoed in her memory, deep calm, carrying the steady patience of a man who built his world with wood and faith. To read his words again was like hearing him breathe beside her. The cat raised its head, blinked, and meowed low, as if in answer. Helen opened another page. This time it was not a letter but a note written hurriedly in the margins of the Bible itself. She tilted it toward the light. The date. She froze. The date was the same as this very morning, only 40 years past. Her heart stumbled. The note read, "The little watcher came again today, faithful as ever. If anyone finds these words, know this. The day Misty returns, the past has not truly gone." Her breath grew shallow. The Bible slipped slightly from her lap, the papers fluttering to the rug. She bent forward, gathering them with trembling hands. Another page had torn loose, falling flat at her feet. She picked it up, unfolded it, and read the final words William had left her. "Helen, if ever you see Misty again, remember, it means our memories live. It means we are not lost." Her lips parted, a soft cry breaking free. She pressed the letter to her lips, whispering his name. "William?" The room seemed to shift with her grief and wonder. Dust floated in the shafts of sunlight like tiny spirits. Outside, the wind rattled bare branches, whispering through the eaves like a choir of ghosts. The cat leapt down from the shelf, landing with silent grace. Its tail lashed once. Then, without warning, it darted across the room, slipping beneath the door with a swiftness that stole her breath. Helen gasped, struggling to her feet. Her knees wavered, but she forced herself forward, clutching the Bible to her chest. The room felt emptier now, hollowed by the sudden absence of the calico. She turned back, scanning the floor. That was when she saw it. The Bible had fallen slightly open on the rug. Between its pages, something gleamed. A small key, tarnished with time, its metal catching the morning light. Helen knelt slowly, her heart thundering. She picked it up, the cool weight pressing against her palm, and stared. A key. Hidden all these years in William's Bible, left for her. Her knees buckled. She lowered herself to the chair, clutching the key and the letters together. Outside, the wind howled louder, as though the town itself exhaled. The Bible lay open across her lap. William's words stared back at her. "If ever you see Misty again." She closed her eyes. The tears slid silently down her cheeks, dripping onto the key. The mystery had only begun. The key lay heavy in Helen's palm, its surface dulled with rust but still glinting faintly when the sun caught it. She sat in her chair with the Bible open beside her, letters folded neatly under the cover, her breath uneven. The cat was gone, vanished like smoke, yet the silence it left behind hummed with insistence. This key meant something. William had meant for her to find it, but she could not face its mystery alone. That afternoon, she asked Clara to sit with her. The nurse entered briskly, her shoes clicking softly on the linoleum floor. Clara James, 40, her auburn hair pulled tight in its knot, carried the air of competence like armor. Her green eyes, though weary, still burned with a sharp light. Helen lifted her trembling hand, the key lying across her palm like a relic. "Clara," she whispered, "I need you to help me find what this belongs to." Clara frowned. "A key? Where did you—" "In William's Bible. Hidden. Left for me." Clara pressed her lips together, caught between duty and doubt. She hesitated, then reached for the key. It was cool, rough against her fingertips. "It looks old." "Storage, maybe," Helen nodded faintly. "Take me there." "Please, I can't do it without you." Later, George Holloway joined them. He leaned on his cane, his tall frame stooped yet still broad at the shoulders. His gray eyes scanned the key and narrowed in thought. "That's not for a door up here. I've worked enough locks to know. Looks like one of those storage room keys, basement level." The word basement fell heavy in Helen's chest, a place of dust and shadows. Still, she nodded. "Then that's where we go." The three of them moved through the hall. The building moaned under winter wind, the walls rattling faintly as if echoing footsteps from decades past. Clara carried the key, George walked beside Helen, and Helen herself clutched the railing, each step measured, her heart a wild bird in her chest. They reached the basement corridor, dim and narrow, lit by a single hanging bulb that buzzed and flickered. The air smelled of damp stone and forgotten time. Shadows sprawled across the walls like black vines. Clara glanced back, her face unreadable. George's cane tapped steady against the floor, the sound like a heartbeat. At the end of the hall stood a door, paint-chipped, a small iron plate fixed above the handle. Clara tried the key. It slid in smoothly as though it had been waiting. The click was soft, deliberate. The door groaned open. Inside lay a room untouched by years of footsteps. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes, trunks, relics of those who had come before. A cold draft breathed across them, stirring a fine cloud of dust that danced in the dim light. Helen's breath hitched. She stepped forward, her shoes sinking into dust thick as velvet. Clara pulled a box from a shelf, its lid stiff, its corners marked with faded handwriting. Whitaker. She set it on the table, brushed away cobwebs, and opened it. Inside, wrapped in brittle paper, lay an album bound in cracked leather. Helen reached for it with trembling hands, the edges rough against her skin. She lifted the cover slowly, as if afraid the pages might crumble. Photographs. Her breath faltered. Faces smiled from the sepia images. William's steady eyes, her own younger face framed with laughter, her son as a boy, his hair tousled. And at the edge of nearly every picture, the calico cat. Misty, perched on a chair, nestled at their feet, her bell collar faintly glinting. Helen's throat closed. A sob rose, soft and broken, as memories roared back like a tide. She traced the lines of William's face with her fingertip, felt the crack in the page where time had split it. George leaned close. "That cat, she was part of your family." "Yes," Helen breathed. "Always." Her eyes fell on one photograph near the end. It showed a winter evening, the family gathered by the window, the Bible open on William's lap. Their son leaned sleepily against her shoulder. Outside the frost-streaked glass, a small figure crouched, its green-gold eyes watching. Misty, waiting. Helen's chest constricted. The photograph trembled in her grip. She remembered that night, the last time they had read together before everything changed. The storm had rolled in, Misty had slipped away, and then life had carried them forward, scattering them like leaves. Her fingers tightened on the album. "It was never just a cat," she whispered. "She carried us." Clara touched her shoulder gently. "Helen, these are beautiful memories, but maybe that's all they are." Helen looked up sharply. "No, look!" She held the photograph toward Clara, her voice rising. "The dates, the words William left me, this album, it's all connected." Misty came back because our memories live. He wanted me to find this. Clara's face softened. She said nothing more. The silence pressed heavy, broken only by the distant hum of the building's pipes. Helen sank slowly into a chair, the album open across her lap, her tears dropping onto the worn pages. Then George stiffened. His eyes turned toward the door. There, in the shadowed threshold, the calico sat once more, tail curled, eyes gleaming, as though it had led them here. It made no sound, only watched. Helen wiped her eyes with a shaking hand. "You see her, don't you?" she whispered. George nodded solemnly. "Clear as day." Clara's lips parted, but no words came. She stared, caught between disbelief and surrender. The cat blinked slowly, then turned. It leapt lightly onto the sill of the small basement window, where frost gathered in pale lines. Its gaze lingered on Helen, then drifted toward the dark beyond the glass. And then it stilled, waiting. Helen's heart pounded. She knew the truth. Misty wanted her to follow. Not only into memory, but further, deeper, to a place where past and present crossed. The key had unlocked the room. The album had unlocked the memory. But the cat was leading them farther still. Helen whispered her name. "Misty." The wind outside rose, whistling through unseen cracks, rattling the panes like a summons. The calico did not move. It simply waited, eyes steady, until the silence became unbearable. The storm did not announce itself gently. It came screaming across the Vermont hills like a restless spirit, rattling the shutters of the Maple Street home until every window seemed to shiver in fear. Rain lashed the glass in wild, slanted strokes, and the trees bent low as though bowing to an unseen master. The corridors of the nursing home fell into uneasy silence when the power failed. Amps sputtered. then died, leaving the halls lit only by the blue-white lightning that tore across the sky. Helen Whitaker sat at her window, her hands trembling on the sill. The world outside was blurred by rain, but her gaze fixed on one small, unwavering point, the cat. Its eyes glowed like two lanterns in the downpour, a steady beacon cutting through chaos. For a moment, Helen forgot the storm and felt only the pull of those eyes, as though Misty or something of Misty was still standing guard. A branch struck the roof with a crash. She flinched. Her heart raced, but she refused to step back. "I see you," she whispered into the storm, her voice half prayer, half defiance. Elsewhere in the dark, George Holloway fumbled with a lantern. The 75-year-old's knotted hands finally coaxed a flame to life, casting flickers across his weathered face. His gray eyes carried the calm of someone who had lived through too many winters to fear one more storm. He found Helen's room by the faint outline of her frame against the window. "You're watching it too, aren't you?" he said, lowering himself onto the chair beside her bed. The lantern light made him look older, yet steadier, like oak carved by time. Helen nodded, still staring at the cat's reflection in the rain. George leaned forward, his voice low. "There's an old story they tell around here, about a window cat. Folks say it comes back for the ones who sit and wait too long, the ones left with more memories than days. They called it the Guardian, said it never left its post." Helen turned her head at last. The thunder outside boomed, but inside her room the words felt louder. "A guardian," she repeated. The word tasted of comfort and sorrow. Clara James hurried down the hall, her nurse's uniform soaked at the hem where the storm had swept water under the doors. She was younger than Helen by 30 years, but tonight her face looked aged with worry. She carried a bundle of folders, clutched tightly against her chest. When she entered the room, the lamplight caught her sharp features. Dark hair pulled back, a furrow between her brows that deepened with each passing hour of the storm. "Helen," she said breathlessly, "I went through the old files. Storage was nearly flooding. But I found something." She spread the papers on Helen's lap with shaking hands. "Look, records from decades ago." Helen adjusted her spectacles, squinting at the faded ink. She read slowly, carefully, her lips moving without sound. Her chest tightened as she recognized the name. Misty. The cat she had once entrusted to the home before moving in herself. Clara's voice softened. "It says Misty lived here, was cared for by staff. For years, Helen. And then one day, no one knows when she disappeared." The storm pressed against the windows, groaning like an impatient guest. Helen traced the old records with her finger, the way one might trace the lines of a beloved face. "So it was real," she whispered. "I didn't imagine her." "No," Clara said firmly. "You didn't." Lightning slashed the sky, illuminating the courtyard. In that brilliant flash, Helen saw the cat again, closer this time, pressed against the glass, its fur soaked and bristling. For a heartbeat, time folded back. She was no longer 72. She was young, seated by William's side with Misty curled at her feet. The memory burned bright and vanished with the lightning. George rose slowly, lantern in hand. His voice carried reverence. "That's no ordinary cat. Look at it, Helen. Look at its eyes. That's blood carried forward. That's Misty's line." Helen's breath caught. The thought struck with both wonder and fear. Could it be true? Could generations pass, and yet the animal return to the very same window as though memory itself was inherited? Clara glanced between them, her skepticism fading under the weight of what she saw. The cat's eyes held not just reflection but recognition. The hours dragged, the storm showed no mercy. But within the room, time seemed to coil tighter, pulling past and present together. Helen's mind wrestled with itself, half longing to believe, half afraid to hope. Every flicker of lightning revealed the cat anew, as though it refused to be erased. At last, near dawn, the storm began to ebb. The rain slowed to a whisper. The thunder retreated to the horizon. Helen slumped back in her chair, exhaustion lining her face. Clara dozed in the corner, papers scattered around her lap. George had nodded off, the lantern guttering low. Helen forced her eyes open one last time. The window was empty. No eyes in the rain, no shadow on the sill. Her heart sank. But then her gaze dropped. Just below the window, resting on the stone ledge, something gleamed faintly in the gray light of morning. She pressed her hand to the glass. It was there, waiting. A silver bookmark etched with delicate patterns, its edge engraved with a single name. William. Helen's breath broke into a sob. She covered her mouth, shoulders shaking. This was no dream. The storm had taken much, but it had also given back something she thought was gone forever. The cat had vanished, but it had left behind a sign, as if William himself had placed it there. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the hushed corridors of the Maple Street home. Rainwater dripped steadily from the eaves, each drop sounding like a metronome counting down the last secrets of Helen Whitaker's life. The morning light was hesitant, breaking through torn clouds in thin shafts that spilled across the window where she always sat. Helen's hands trembled as she turned the small silver bookmark over in her palm. Its surface was worn smooth from years of use, but there, unmistakably etched, were William's initials, W.H.W., a wedding gift long forgotten, long thought lost, now returned. Her chest tightened as though someone had pressed an old melody against her heart, one she had not dared hum in decades. Her breath caught. "William," she whispered. The name drifted into the quiet room, mingling with the scent of rain and the faint musk of the cat's fur. The calico, those green-gold eyes luminous in the dim light, watched her intently, as if urging her forward. Helen's throat ached as she opened the family Bible once more. Its spine cracked like brittle wood. Pages whispered with the faint, papery sigh of memory. And there, tucked deep within, were the letters. William's handwriting, firm but tender, sprawled across pages now yellowed with age. She traced the loops of his script, her fingertips tingling as though brushing his very skin. "To my Helen," the first began. "If you are reading this, then Misty has found her way back. Know this, she carries what we could not memory, loyalty, love across time." Helen's tears fell silently, darkening the paper. But the sorrow was different now, no longer raw. It had softened, transformed. Each letter was a bridge, a way back to the evenings when William would read aloud by lamplight, Misty curled at their feet. The room seemed to lean closer, walls breathing with her, listening. Clara James entered quietly, her nurse's uniform rumpled, hair escaping its bun. She carried the weariness of long night shifts, but her voice was warm. "Helen? Are you all right?" Helen lifted the bookmark. "It was his," she said, her voice fragile yet steady. Clara came nearer, eyes widening. She understood not all the details, but enough. Beside her, George Holloway stepped in. His old carpenter's hands, scarred and strong, rested on the doorframe. He said nothing at first, simply tipped his head in a gesture of respect. The calico leapt from the window to the Bible, curling near the open pages. Clara's gaze softened. "Then she stays," she murmured. "We'll look after her. Part of you, part of him." George nodded, his voice gravelly. "A keeper of the old stories." "That's what she is." Helen pressed her hand against the cat's back, the steady rhythm of its breathing grounding her. For the first time in years, she felt she was not holding her memories alone. Her eyes fell on one final line, scrawled at the very back of the Bible. Not William's usual neat script, but hurried, almost desperate. "If Misty returns, know this, love has never left." Helen's chest tightened. The storm outside seemed to hush, the world pausing to let the words sink in. This was not coincidence, not illusion. The cat at her side was no ordinary visitor. It was a thread woven through time, binding her present to her past, binding memory to hope. She closed her eyes, inhaling deeply. The grief that once hollowed her now curved into something else. A quiet strength, a strange peace. The light shifted, growing warmer as the morning advanced. Dust motes danced in the beams like tiny messengers. Helen leaned back into her chair, Bible open, the letters spread like fallen leaves across her lap. Clara moved to the window, straightening the curtains, her eyes damp, though she pretended otherwise. George stood a while longer, then muttered something about fixing a loose hinge, his throat tight. The calico settled into Helen's lap, purring with a vibration that seemed to echo through her bones. Her hand stroked its fur, slow and steady. She thought of William's voice, of Misty's soft paws on wooden floors, of all the evenings she thought had been stolen. They had not. They had been waiting right here, beyond the window. Helen reached for a pen, her fingers stiff but determined. On the blank margin of the Bible, beneath William's final line, she wrote, "If Misty returns, we will remember that love never truly goes." Her hand shook, but when she finished, she felt lighter, freer. The storm clouds parted outside, revealing a dawn gentler than any she had seen in years. Pale pink, soft gold, colors that brushed the sky like forgiving hands. Helen smiled, her lips trembling but sure. She sat at the window, the cat curled warmly in her arms, the Bible resting open beside her. The silver bookmark caught the light, flashing like a small star, the camera of the mind pulled back. The window, the room, the frail woman, the cat. Beyond the glass, the world was washed clean, ready for morning. The Bible's pages fluttered as a breeze slipped through the slightly ajar frame. They turned, stopped, revealing William's script once more. His words glowed in the new light. Love has never left. Helen closed her eyes, and for a heartbeat, it seemed William's presence filled the room. Not as a ghost, but as memory made flesh, as love made eternal. And when she opened them again, the world was still there, but softer, kinder. She was not alone. Not anymore. In the quiet corners of life, where time seems to take more than it gives, love finds a way to remain. Helen's journey reminds us that memories are not ghosts meant to haunt us, but gentle companions meant to guide us. A silver bookmark, a familiar paw print, a window filled with morning light, each of these whispers that love never truly leaves. It changes form, yet it stays, waiting to be seen again. And perhaps that is the lesson we carry. When we open our hearts, even the smallest presence can become a bridge to everything we thought we had lost. If this story touched your heart, share with us in the comments, where are you watching from tonight? Don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss the next story of love, memory, and hope waiting just beyond the window.